last item for you guys is moving to the 21-22 budget cuts / revenue enhancements. Never a fun topic. Dee Dee, you are on mute. Okay.
Yep, it always goes to another screen, the actual controls, but you can see my budget containment screen, right? Okay, so due to the failure of the 2019 operating referenda, the district, as you know, cut $6 million in the current school year, and we'll need to cut additional funds next year in 21-22. So I'll go over both of those to refresh your memory, but we did develop a 2-year plan. So for the current year and then for the next year. So we'll go through those, and then I'm going to ask you as a school board at the 24th meeting of April, the April 24th meeting, that you also then adopt these, so it's very clear to everybody what those cuts are, so there's no confusion. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over each individual one, but just hit the highlights. This was included in your package. So we have categories, administration, instruction, instructional support, special ed, operations, and then athletic and activities. So this is the page that is a total of $6 million. I'm going to tell you the highlights from that. So of that, this is where we changed from a 7-period day to a 6-period day for $1.6 million. Middle school restructuring that we had for this current year was about $1 million. Increase in class size by 1.5 students at the elementary level, $1.1 million. Those 3 items alone, $3.7 million of the $6 million that we made in reductions. Then on the general fund side, we had a pay freeze for all staff other than teachers. Was close to $700,000 for the general fund. In the community ed fund, it was $121,000. That's not included in this figures you have here. And nutrition services, another $58,000. And the reason they're not included in here is because they're separate fund. The budget cuts you see are related to the general fund. But as you know, both community education and nutrition services decided that if everyone else was taking a freeze, they would take one as well. Additionally, in this 2021 year, there was also supply budget cut of $286,000. And then the operating capital, which Pam talked about, we did actually carve out some of that to pay for other things and not intended. That was nearly $500,000. So those larger items that I just mentioned to you makes up about $5.79 million of the $6 million that we cut in the current school year. Now I'm going to move on to my next screen. And, I'm not quite as smooth at this as Pam is. So bear with me a second. So the next one we're going to share now is the upcoming school year, okay? So the majority of this plan hasn't changed from what we had a year ago. And as you recall, when we did these 2-year plans, we engaged the community in this. We had a big community meeting, we had some listening sessions, we worked together with our principals to develop ideas. So this 2-year plan really, for the most part, is pretty much what we gave you 2 years ago. Probably a little change due to some dollars. Again, I'm not going to go through line by line, but you can see same categories that we had before. You'll note, and I can talk further about this, nothing in administration, but as we've talked about before, we've done budget cuts over years and years and years, and we did a lot of administrative cuts over the year, and I can show you a chart here in a little bit where disproportionately we cut more in administration than we did other places. And our goal before had been to avoid cuts in the classroom, so we made cuts elsewhere for a long time. Last year was the year that there was no other place to go but to make cuts in the classroom. So in the 21-22 school year, the majority of the cuts are as follows. So this is $3.1 million total. Pay freeze just under $2 million, and that is for our teachers in all categories, whether it's in special education or general education, all teachers. Then we are insourcing our transportation, bringing our transportation in-house, that's $200,000. We're increasing our fees, that was in the plan, so you already approved a plan for facility rental rates, increasing that. We did, I believe in January, we brought those to the board. That's $65,000. Athletic and activity fees, we have those planned for $110,000. So total for $175,000. Now last year's plan, we had some other increases in fees. They didn't totally come to fruition, mostly because of COVID. So sometimes the plans don't work out as we planned because of other circumstances out of our control. And then the other thing that is on this plan that previously was not on there is your decision to move to a 6-period day at the middle school. That saves an additional $443,000. So of the 3.1 million, 2.75 comes from those categories I just mentioned. And then there's just some others in a smaller fashion as well. So with that, I just wanted to see if anyone had any questions.
Board members, questions for Dee Dee?
No question, Dee Dee. Just one observation. People are going to see, if you look at the schedule, you don't see any reductions in administration. But if you recall from the previous schedule that you showed, there was a significant reduction in out of administration that, as I recall, was more than proportional to the impact of the administration kind of budget relative to the others. So, while people aren't seeing cuts in administration here, the cuts were relatively pretty severe last year, and we already are, we're at 3%. I think of our budget is administration, which is at the low end of our peers. So I just wanted to make sure that's understood.
Yep. So this is the slide showing from 2009 until 2022. 14.49% of cuts were made in administration, athletic and activities just under 5%, operations just under 12, special education just under 10. Keep in mind, special education, there are requirements for what's called maintenance of effort. You can't lower your special education costs too much, but Laura's she's been a great partner in all of this. So instructional support 18.77, and then instruction 40% over the total cuts. This pie chart would have looked a lot different had it been a year ago before we made it. But then what I want to show you is this. So the blue bar represents the cuts during this time period that I just showed you on the last slide. And then the gray bar is the actual budget. So it has been, and to your point, Tim, we have made cuts greater than what the total budget has been in administration over that same period of time. We've made less cuts in instruction based on what our total budget would have been, and you can see the rest of them. Again, here's that difference in special education where we just can only cut so much out of that particular budget. But yeah, to your point, these are the items that we wanted to share with people. We know that we will have to communicate that because we also know that that's always the first question. But the thing I want to remind the school board and people of the community, making those cuts in administration early on has saved us dollars all throughout these years, right? Instead of we've waited, right? And by taking the time to wait with the cuts in the classroom, that's provided us more time to have the educational programs in the classroom that we want. But last year, this year, is the year that we ended up making those cuts that weren't very fun and nobody wants us to do, but also we have just kind of no place left to go when you have to cut as much as we did. That.
Right. Yeah, I mean, your pie chart, I mean, the administration, the cuts to administration were, what was it, 14% of all of the overall cuts, right? So 14% of your reductions were made on 3% of your budget. So, I mean, clearly it took it. So everyone loves to say cut administration, but people have to understand that we have to, it takes a lot of thought, as you saw with, our building leadership today. There's a lot of thought, we see it in every meeting, that goes into managing the some 1,200 employees we have and the providing educational experience for 9,500 kids. So, and we're, I remind people all the time that it can't be lost on us, and we need to appreciate the fact that every time we cut that administration staff and we're doing more with less, that, it's not lost on me, and I'm trying to make sure it's not lost on the people that it's the Deedees and the Pams of the world that are stepping up to have to do more. So thank you for that, and I just want to make sure people understand that in defense of administration. So that's that.
I just extend one comment on that, Tim, which is a really great point. Not only do those cuts in admin result in a heavier burden for those who are left standing, it also results in a heavier burden for the folks on the teaching and learning side of things, right? I mean, the way that administration helps to offload some of those things that our teachers craftily don't want to spend time doing because they want to be in the classroom, they want to be teaching, they want to be in front of our kids, right? That's a really important balance to understand. The business functions of a school don't go away just because we don't want to pay for them. It just means that somebody else has to do it. And, putting that burden on teachers, that makes it really hard, and that impacts our student experience as well.
Yeah.
Sean, did you?
I just, one other thing I want to remind you, when we talk about administration, it's not just the cabinet members that you see here. So administration includes every one of our principals. It includes in the category that we have, includes our assistant principals. It support services, the clerical staff in the main offices, as well as, I think it's the clerical, Pam's going to correct me on that one if I'm wrong, but also our deans in our schools. So all of those bigger supports that you were talking about, Angela, that's what's included in that number. So I think some people always think that it's just maybe people at the DEC. It includes all of those individuals.
Yeah, I was alluding to that. Thanks for the clarification, but yes, that's very important.
Sean, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, I had a question on the transportation piece. I guess I was just curious, have we sort of revalidated that expected savings number, knowing that we're kind of looking at a post-COVID world next fall, and we may have to keep some of those same different procedures next year?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Both Pam and I are laughing, and I'm sure if O'Connell had his camera on, he would be too. This has been a challenge to figure out a new budget for a whole new department. And so we've been working on that particular budget. We'll have more information for you probably in a good month or so, or closer to the beginning of June. But there's just a lot of individuals to bring over, to hire, and then to just see where everything falls out. But some of the equipment that we were able to purchase with funding from the tech levy or for COVID funding, that will help overall. So how about if I say stay tuned?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we had a good sort of.
Yeah, we're working very hard to follow that transportation study that was done, started in 2017 or 2018, and looking at what that progression would be and what we paid over time to Positive Connections, because every year it went up by about 3%. So what does that contracted amount look like compared to what we think the budget is? So we are working on it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good question.
Dee Dee, I wanted to ask a couple of questions. You had mentioned that about 2 million of our cost savings is due to asking the teachers to take a freeze, and that seems, I know, a bit demoralizing in a year that everybody has worked really, really hard. And I also appreciate and just want to acknowledge that all of our other employee groups did that for this year. Is this a hard freeze or a soft freeze?
So it's what we call hard freeze would be no new money, no longevity, no steps, anything, no lanes. And this is a soft freeze. So if an individual has a longevity advancement, they are granted that. So that does occur. Lanes would occur for teachers if they get additional education. Steps would occur. It's just not putting new money on their salary schedule. Okay?
Got it.
So
they would still get an increase if they, were prepared or had that based upon their tenure, or they received a master's degree or whatever. So, and there's quite a bit of, what are the percentages on that? How much is
of what is steps and lanes cost?
Yes, and that's in the budget?
Yes, that's in the budget, but I don't recall the number off the top of my head for just steps and lanes.
Okay. But we do have that budgeted in there.
Oh,
So we're
sure.
not, so we're not asking for a hard freeze like what the rest of the employee groups.
No,
Okay.
well, the rest of the employee groups had the same thing, Lisa.
Okay.
So no new money to their salary schedule, but if they were longevity, which some of our groups have, not all of them do. So some groups, it was truly, there was no increase for them in the first year of their contract. Second, there was a small increase for staff. So next year, very small increase. Whereas it's the flipped way for the teachers are on the second year of their 2-year contract currently and have a new contract starting next year.
Okay, great. So, yes, thanks for that clarification, because they, work hard for that, as all of you do as well. The other thing that I wanted to kind of bring up is there's been a bit of chat around reinstating some of the budget pieces, through referendum or other. Can you tell us, what would that cost and kind of the long-term impact that would have?
Yeah, I'm gonna share my screen again. So I actually will be talking more about this in an upcoming meeting, but let's just look at it a little bit. So the document you see right here is considering 0% increase going forward. Do I have that right, Pam? Is this 0, right? This is one you just did today for me.
Correct, it's 0.
0. We've done many scenarios just seeing what could potentially happen. But let's just say there's no new increase to the funding formula. So a 0% increase this year and all outgoing years. That's worst case scenario for us. We've included our enrollment that we've projected in the past. So the current year, 2021, that we're in right now, you saw tonight that Pam said we'd be at 5.71%. You can see where we've been just a little bit ago is 2017-18 at 9.47. Dropped considerably. We used fund balance. We made cuts in this year. So with a $3 million cut, we'll be just a little over, 6.65, 6.6. But we would have to make in each of these years, those would be the amount of the cuts. So now when we get into, I think it's next month, we'll be showing you options as it relates to referenda. But if you can just kind of visualize, $3.7 million was the amount of those 3 items I mentioned as it relates. Actually, it's a little more than that when you throw in the 6th period day at the So about 4.1 million, 4.2 altogether. So 6-period day at the high school, the middle school restructuring this year, and then going to 6-period day is about 1.3 million, and then the class size at the elementary school, which was 1.1, I think I said. So all of those packaged together is over $4 million. We already have a budget gap. So if you add another 4 million onto that, that would be a sizable referenda to bring in to make up for all of that. I guess what I'm telling you is that, and I've said this to you all before, I would really, you really need to consider not bringing back all of those items. We just can't afford to continue down that path long term. And there's only so much that taxpayers really want to pay as it relates to an operating referenda. And if our growth comes back with students, we're going to be looking at more facilities. And so I would really strongly caution bringing back all of those items.
Dee, I appreciate, showing us, again, I know that, we're trying to balance listening to our community and many of our stakeholders, and which this has had a devastating impact on, but also kind of what the dollar looks like, kind of going forward. So thanks for that. Any other questions for Dee Dee?
Just real quick on that schedule that you showed, Dee Dee, that was, I just want to make sure everyone understands, those budget cuts, when you say a cut for the 22-23 year, right? The cuts for the 23-24 year are incremental. Those are all incremental, right? That's not you're making the one cut, it rolls through in the incremental de minimis, right? We got to cut 3.1 in 21-22, which we've done. We're going to cut 3.5 in 22-23, another 2.5. So this is another, call it 9 million of cuts on top of the 9 million we've cut in the last 2 years. So I just want to make sure everyone understands, doesn't think that, that 3.1 is, well, we only have to cut a 400,000 more next year. No, that's incremental. I just wanted to, okay, thank you.
Tim, thanks for that clarification. Any other questions, board members? All right.
So we'll bring this back at the next meeting, ask your approval of that, and then we will incorporate it in the 21-22 school year budget.
Okay, great.
We'll also have the communications department is doing a great job of putting together some informational webpage, and this will likely be part of that as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks, Pam. This is the Pam and Dee Dee show today. So thank you so much for providing us so much good information. I don't know what we would do without you.